Now all hell can break loose.
Here my clocks are wrong.
It's five thirty, not 4:30.
Right.
But you said you were gonna get it somewhere. Oh, God.
Who would I tell if I saw a recreational trail sign that has business hours on it that need to be updated? The business? The problem is putting hours on the sign.
How much are those for a sign?
What's that?
How much are those to be for a sign? You know, the blue ones?
Oh, those are, I think, 500.
A sign?
For 5 years or something, I want to say. That's like $100 a year.
500.
For 5 years, right?
I remember that cost.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's for 5 years.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, let me know when you're ready, I'll start the recording.
oh shit, I forgot to give you my minor edits. Under the tab. And we have, there, it changed on my phone. I think we're ready.
Recording in progress.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Our city council meeting of Monday, July 11th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Dave Anderson? Here. Carl Broberg? Here. Jen Mazias?
Here.
Mayor McGrath?
Here.
Tom Nynus?
Here.
Karen Novacek?
Here.
Laura Tulowitzki?
Here.
All present.
Excellent, the gang's all here. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our next item is approval of minutes from the city council meeting of June 13th, 2022.
Mayor, I would move approval of the minutes of the common council meeting on June 13, 2022.
I'll second that.
Motion by Karen, second by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstention due to absent. Being absent. Okay. Next item is approval of monthly expenditures via roll call vote.
Mayor, I would move approval of the monthly expenditures as reviewed.
Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Laura. All in favor? Oh, sorry, I always do that. About half the time, I'm about 50%.
Laura Tulowitzki?
Yes.
Karen Novacek?
Yes.
Tom Nynus?
Yes.
Mayor McGrath?
Yes.
Jen Mazias?
Yes.
Carl Broberg?
Yes.
Dave Anderson? Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. I even try to say it to remind myself. Okay, next item is public comment. Is anyone here who would like to give public comment online or in person?
I would. Hi, my name is Jeremy Oswald. I live at 401 West Fifth Street. Just wanted to speak about the expansion at Thompson's Weston Park. I believe that the expansion, if it's gonna happen, if we're adding more sites, they should be in the area that already has camping. That wasn't considered as part of the research that was done by the engineering firm. I personally wish it would have been. And then I know that there is an option of taking action on that tonight. And I wish you would hold off, and as it says in the pamphlet, that you wait for a public hearing for more information about it. And just a thank you to all of you for being on the board. I know that it's a big job, and I appreciate you all being here, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jeremy. Anyone else here for public comment? Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
I could say more, but
Anyone else? Last call? All right, we will move on. Next item is announcements, proclamations, and appointments. I do not have announcements or proclamations tonight. Just have an appointment recommendation. And we actually had two really great candidates for this. And so the past few positions, it's been really nice having two candidates, but it's hard to choose when you have two very qualified people. So I want to thank everyone who has applied for these board positions. And highly recommend Chris Gaber. She is the first one that I both spoke with and had an application from, and so that's the only reason I chose her above the other candidate. And that's the recommendation that I would make. I think she'd be a great addition to the library board.
Mayor, I would move approval of Chris Gaber to serve on the library, to be appointed to the library board.
I'll second that.
I heard Laura first, so I'm gonna go, motion by Karen, second by Laura. And, any other comments?
Should be good.
Very good. Then all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you to her. And our next item is discussion and action on ordinance 22-004 to amend the zoning code for various density provisions for multifamily structures in the dimensional standards appendix. And that is tab 1 in your packet. This is one of those items that we have been looking at as part of the work that the Plan Commission is doing. And I believe the thought on this was that obviously we need housing, and that there aren't lots and lots of, these multifamily buildings coming forward. And so we would like to make it a little bit easier for one to be affordable for a developer to develop. And so in doing that, we thought that we would match what the requirement is by the state, which was a much smaller per person square footage for a unit. There's a little, it's making the impervious surface a little bit bigger. And we looked at some of the other areas, again, that allowed for that. And again, I think our thinking was if the mixed use waterfront could be at 65 and 85%, and there's one or maybe two, developments that come forward for an apartment building, because there aren't a whole lot of places that can even accommodate an apartment building. I think that was the general thinking behind this move. Does anyone have a motion to make to get it started with discussion? I should stop talking.
Mayor, I would move approval of ordinance 22-004 to amend the zoning code for various density provisions for multifamily structures.
second.
Okay, so that's a motion by Karen, second by Dave.
I think that was my main question there, was the, the impervious surface coverage,
Mhm.
going from a 50% to allowing up to 85%, that seemed, I mean, that was kind of my comparison, like I think that 85% is pretty high. And is that because we're making their lot, we're not making them have as big of a lot?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the likelihood of them covering, so it's not necessarily gonna cover, like, if you think of it in terms of, if we were keeping that minimum lot size at 4,300 square feet per unit, was it? Is that what it was? Yeah. It would be a much bigger area. So 50% of that much bigger area is gonna be comparable to 85% of a much smaller area. So the area itself isn't gonna be necessarily that much bigger, although it could be,
Right.
I guess.
Okay.
What it was also the parking space area.
Correct.
For multi.
Right.
There wasn't, at 50% of some of those lot sizes, you couldn't get enough parking spaces in there for people to park.
Okay.
So it sort of goes along with the territory of having a multi-unit building, having a lot of impervious surface, unless you did like an underground parking
Yeah.
or something like that, which gets very costly.
Yeah, I guess I just want us to start thinking about that kind of stuff in terms of, is there other things, like, I feel like sometimes we don't think about our stormwater runoff, like, is there regulations within that, like, if they were to build something like that, they're gonna have a parking lot, do they have to do some kind of stormwater, like, you see where I'm going with this, it's like, I'd like us to start thinking about that a little bit with everything that's going on, and water, and we all know how quickly things change, and just trying to make us think ahead on this kind of stuff. It sounds like,
So the current rule is anytime you have more than 10,000 square feet of disturbance, it requires a
stormwater plan,
stormwater plan,
and these would most likely be that big.
most likely.
Well, yeah, parking lot would be almost that.
Right.
For all these units.
So we were all satisfied with the plan commission in thinking through those sorts of things. I think they're very good questions to ask.
Yeah, and then my other question is, I understand that we've been working on things, so this came up because just, was there something going on? Was there something proposed? I'm always curious when you do something like this, like, what's the driver?
At the time this was proposed, there was actually some movements, there were several sessions at the league and recommendations that have been made statewide to address housing issues. So in looking at our code based on some of those recommendations that were coming out, these were some of the suggestions that were recommended to make our code a little easier to deal with. Since the time we had started this, are there proposals in the works? I am aware of a proposal in the works which I informed you of today.
Yep.
However, these particular provisions would not impact that, because that would be in a different zone district, and it still would be allowable.
So this is just in the mixed residential. Carl?
Yeah, question on the size of the individual units.
Seems tiny, doesn't it?
An awful lot of the public housing as it is. And, the one is one bed, or the efficiency is 150 square feet. But if you take 45 square feet out for the bathroom, that gives you about 10 by 10 and a half room. I've got a tent that's bigger than that, right, that I take to the Boundary Waters. It carried, having to get into those places and take people out, it would be impossible.
So,
I think these dimensions for a livable space, I can't imagine how depressing that would be to live in.
And I literally think that we matched whatever the state requirement was, but it's a good thing to talk through.
Yeah, what the state requires for Milwaukee or Madison, for whatever down there, but these dimensions are, and then the concern I have again is, I get into these places, the doorways, the hallways, the rooms themselves, how you get in and out of them.
Would that be different now with ADA requirements
Well,
for a new, for a new building? Because you almost couldn't build it that small if you have to meet ADA requirements, right?
yeah, well, that's the question I had, is if this is what we're going to allow. Wow. So I don't care what the state does.
Right, I mean, we struggled with, coming up with a number, right? Like, what's the minimum, right? And so we decided that the minimum is crazy, right? It's like communist China small, right? But that is the base minimum that the state requires, so we just, knowing that no one's gonna develop something that tiny, right? I mean,
I wouldn't say that. No, there are people that will.
yeah, but I mean, as far as housing goes, for the needed housing that we are in need of here, they're gonna have to follow. There's no way 150 square feet is gonna be in compliance with ADA. No way. So, not nursing home, but gonna be that small. And so, what we struggled with was what was, to us, what was.
Being too restrictive for.
Right,
a
like
development.
if we said 300 square feet and someone said we want a piece start coming out at 290. So, you know what I mean, that's so, knowing that they're not gonna be that small.
And then, I'm just gonna interject here too, in addition to the discussion that we're having, would a new, development have to get approval to say that's too small?
Not for ordinance.
If it meets the ordinance, then it just is. If they're following all applicable rules and laws, is ADA, something that has to be followed when you're building a new building?
Depends on the type of building,
Funding.
and if you're getting any additional funding and the number of multi-unit, how many units you're putting in there. So it depends.
Okay.
is the answer.
Okay,
But we also did have a discussion about workforce housing, being like a dormitory style room, right? And so that's a possibility, I suppose. Having a room that small for one person to live in.
Sure. With shared kitchens and,
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
people do really inventive things right now.
Tiny homes.
Tiny homes.
Yeah, some of them are 400 square feet.
so this is per efficiency unit, 150 square feet is really tiny. Does anyone have an alternate number that they would like to see? I mean,
What was it, wasn't it, are the changes on there? Wasn't it-
I don't have what the previous was, I just have what the new proposal is.
It was like 400.
I can look at the previous, but just to clarify on this too, in section 15 of the ordinance, it does say that bathroom space is excluded from that square footage calculation. So your comment that taking away bathroom, that is 150 feet in addition to the bathroom.
It's still small.
Yes,
It's still
yes.
small.
But it's about the size of a hotel room, really, if you think about it. A standard, basic hotel room, you know.
So previously, the efficiency was 500 square feet. And then one bedroom, 650. Two bedrooms, 800. Three bedrooms, 1,000.
Which was fairly restrictive when it comes to apartments and designing something that would fit into, well, any one of the small lots that we have in town. So we just decided to be less, well, I guess.
Less restrictive with the size.
Well, that, just to alleviate any confusion, we just decided to go with the state limit.
That would be step one.
No, it'd be like-
This is for a multifamily.
Multi-family.
Oh, that's on I was like,
Townhomes or condos or apartment buildings.
I mean, no developer's gonna build something that they don't think that someone would live in. However, the concern that you raise is valid, and but I just don't know how to answer what is enough space
Size.
for an efficiency. For an efficiency, that means one room plus a bathroom, right? And so it's not like you have little corners to get around, it's just one space, other
Oh,
than,
yes, you do.
except for then there is furniture.
I can guarantee you there are corners to get
Yeah.
around.
The furniture, but I mean, not walls. You're not making your way around walls once you're in there.
Well, in 150 square feet, no, you wouldn't have a wall, but anything else, I mean, the units that we have today, the hallways are too small, the doorways are too small. Once you get furniture in there, I mean, it's honestly depressing when you walk in.
Sure. A lot of it depends on how someone keeps their apartment.
That too.
I've lived in an efficiency that was probably not much bigger than 150 square feet. It's not exciting,
But
but
is that what we want to
but you have a
build
space
in the
for yourself.
city? Is that what we want to build in the city?
Well, the city would be the place to build it you're not gonna build that out in the country.
No.
A place with tiny little apartments like that to accommodate people who are here to work in town who need a place to live. In your opinion, what would be more practical than 150 square feet without going back to 500 or whatever it was that we had as the minimum before?
I haven't looked at the numbers, I just looked at these numbers and said, this is way too small. I mean, it's not going to attract anybody to live in something. Like I said, I've seen enough of them.
Is it?
Well, is that our only concern in terms of just your, access for medical?
Yeah, that's a major concern.
Because otherwise than that, I mean, if somebody wants to build like tiny homes and people want to live in them for summer housing, and, I mean, right now we have people living in tents. Right.
The fun ones are the spiral staircase.
Right. Those are the good
Can we
ones.
outlaw those?
No, but we've taken people out of them. So,
Because the reality is right now, we have people for summer housing that are living in small campers and tents. So to me, a dormitory type thing with a bedroom and communal kitchens and laundry and stuff, no matter if it's tiny, I mean, I think people would go for that for
A roof over their
$400
head.
a night versus
Right on.
Or a month.
the tent situation or a month versus the tent situation that people are in the fields up in Corning. I don't know, so I don't know how to get to Carl's issue, but otherwise than that, I don't have an issue with that. I think that we're gonna start seeing more and more smaller efficient spaces because of all sorts of things in the United States, just like you get a hotel room when you go to Europe. We don't have spacious,
Or New York.
or New York, yes, or Well, Chicago's getting that way, so I think like smaller and smaller, that's probably not great for people who have to go and rescue people with stretchers. But for efficiency and other reasons, building materials, you name it, right? We're gonna see more and more smaller spaces.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on this? Well, if we don't have any other comments, I'm gonna go ahead to a vote on the motion as presented. And that was a motion by Karen, second by Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Okay, next item, discussion and action on certified survey map approval request for property at 111 South Third Avenue East, Mary McGrath petitioner. And this is tab 2 in your packet. And it looks like we are solving a nonconformity with this request. Does anyone have a motion to get us moving on discussion with this?
Mayor, I would recommend approval of the proposed survey map to create 2 lots.
I'll second that.
Motion by Karen and a second by Tom. Are there comments, questions, or discussion?
I guess the only question I have is, so if it's not creating a non-conformity and there's no issues, why does it come to council?
You want to hear?
So the first part, there would be, in my review, to clarify, I believe that there would be a small nonconformity, but it is a nonconformity that we do have the ability to address, and that is the garage being forward of the house. So, however, we're eliminating a nonconformity by having 2 primary structures on 1 lot. So we've faced this situation before, and with that, I still recommend approval. I don't believe that there's any detriment. The requirement that certified survey maps come to council, we've had this requirement for many years. This is within the subdivision ordinance. I don't believe that there is any state law that requires that it come to council. If the council wants to change the process on that, it is open to discussion, but it would require an ordinance amendment. The last time we addressed certified survey maps is it did not need to, that was when it required, if it required a survey map on lots that, if they were going to be divided along existing platted lines, it did not need to have be a certified survey map. In this case, it would, because we are not dividing along existing platted lines. So,
Okay,
but there's a lot for us to look at in this, because we have to make sure that properties still have proper legal access, access for street access for emergency vehicles. Utility billing is based on any time a property is divided. We have to make sure that utility laterals do not cross property lines, that we're not going to create any sort of non-conformities zoning wise and whatnot. So those are all things that I look at when reviewing this.
yeah, I guess my point was, something like this, I trust the administration when there's nothing major. So I was just wondering why it was coming to us, because I didn't think there was any non-conforming. I didn't catch up with the garage in the front was non-conforming. Thank you. I don't have any issues with it.
But it is something to consider whether we want to continue to have something like this have to come to council or not for a future
But yeah, I'm always looking for
decision.
something that, typing this up and.
Peel off the layer of.
It's not a big deal. I'm just thinking of the administration, so.
Now, in this case, did you say this would have had to come before us because it was creating a nonconformity, or?
Not because of the non-conformity. We have an ordinance that requires certified survey maps be approved by council.
But we could change that if we wanted to.
I believe that could be changed.
Looking that up right now.
Okay.
See if there is a requirement.
It's a great survey map. It's good. Approve of it.
Any other comments, questions, or discussion? Otherwise, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and an abstention. Motion passes. Okay, our next item is discussion and action on request for second driveway access at 515 West 6th Street. Karen Reed petitioner, and that is in tab 3 of your packet. Again, we should have a motion to get our discussion moving forward. Does anyone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second it.
Motion by Dave, second by Tom. My question, as I was reading about this, is what is the purpose of our current limitation on the second driveway? So that I can understand that, to see if this conflicts with that at all. Or is it really not? It's just what you remember.
We've had a lot of these lately.
Yeah.
So in relation to second driveways, there's not a lot of history with this ordinance, and the last time we had a second driveway came up, you asked the question, why do we have these come to council for approval?
Did I ask that?
I don't know who asked it, but somebody asked the question.
Well, I was thinking safety, right? Like, I was trying to think of why we wouldn't approve. I thought it was like how many entrances and like safety of pedestrians and things like that.
And those are all reasonable, good things to consider, because the more accesses you have and vehicles turning and whatnot, it can cause an issue, snow, all those sorts of things. So those are the basic things that we look at in trying not to have confusion, and if we have, the state will limit, for example, along state highways, you don't want too many accesses because it can cause confusion. Where are vehicles going to turn and so forth. So I would defer to, if our public works director has any other reasons, because I do believe that he is looking at a potential ordinance amendment to clarify our ordinance in the future. At least that's what he told me. But if he has any other comments, otherwise, if that answers your question.
And just before you even start there, Jerry, I'm gonna say one more thing. It looks like the way that this lot exists, it takes up most of that lot almost.
Big lot.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, her primary residence is actually on Fifth Street, and she's establishing a drive on Sixth, on the opposite side of her lot to access a proposed structure. The interesting thing about this ordinance is that there are parameters within the ordinance that restrict second driveways within so many feet of utilities, existing driveways, corners. I asked Scott the same thing. I was like, if you meet all those guidelines and you have those required setbacks, bring it before council every time for a request. I felt as though maybe we would be asking to remove that portion of in the ordinance that come into council on that, as long as they meet the prerequisites of the ordinance for the setbacks from utilities and corners and existing driveways and neighboring driveways and property corners. That would limit anybody from putting driveways in a very tight area where it would make it, a hazardous situation.
Would you see something like that, Jerry, still requiring, the recommendation for the width, coming from Public Works or something like that?
Yes.
'Cause sometimes I know that you made it a little bit wider and sometimes a little bit narrower.
Well, and I'm sure Carl can probably amend to this. So this is a pretty restrictive width in the driveways. Where most municipalities now, new driveways are, for residential are max of 24 feet. Because trying to maneuver into an 18-foot driveway with any kind of emergency vehicles, with other vehicles in there, trying to get too deep, it's almost impossible. So, I think there's certain sections of that ordinance that need to be addressed, down the road. Me and Scott were talking about making some revisions to that, but I do believe that the ordinance itself has plenty of, guidance within it to either approve or deny a second entryway, depending,
Is there a reason why you're recommending the 18-foot width instead of?
because that's what the ordinance says.
Oh.
So she wrote it up, she was like 14 feet, it's like, the ordinance says that she can go to a max of 18.
Oh, man.
So that's why I wrote it in there, that even though she has written that, the ordinance does allow an 18-foot opening.
Oh, okay, but it only allows an 18-foot opening.
18 is as wide as you can go, so.
I missed that part. Okay, any other questions for Jerry or any other comments?
No, we've got a couple of these and some of them, it just would be consistent on how we approve these and not approve these. So far, we've approved all of them, different reasons. I like the ordinance because I don't think we need a bunch of driveways for convenience, next week. So I think when I read the ordinance, I had to look it up. Because I'm kind of got a thing on driveways lately. So I actually like a lot of the ordinance pieces and parts to it. So I agree that, I don't know if it needs to come to council or not, but I like the guts of the ordinance, I guess, I think. So this one seems to be fine, big lot, needs all the parameters.
Anyone else? Seeing nothing, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item, review, discussion, and action, if we so desire, on West End Park Campground Expansion Plan provided by Cooper Engineering. That is tab 4 of your packet. I don't believe that requires action to be taken, but it allows it. So,
And the architect, Nicole, is online.
oh, good, thanks, Nicole, for joining us.
I'm just wondering.
So, the city is looking for revenue. The campgrounds are one of the only ways that we get direct revenue. We all know that there's a demand for camping. And when we started discussing this and reviewing the plan that was made a few years back, there seemed to be a high degree of dissatisfaction with the plan. And so that is why the council directed the engineer to come up with some options that went outside of the boundaries of that plan. So the plan that we have before us, I don't know if we can have Nicole talk a little bit about her experience, or do we need a motion to get us moving forward with discussion? We're allowed to have an introduction. Nicole, would you mind taking a few minutes to talk about your experience in what you did to prepare this plan for us?
Yes, I would. So hello, Mayor, council members, and staff. I am Nicole Hajkevich, and just for a small correction to Tony, I'm actually an engineer. And so we were hired, as you said, to kind of reevaluate the conceptual layouts for an expansion to the existing campground. And just quickly, I'll just do a brief, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Just briefly, I just wanted to go through the history and the process that we went through to get where we are tonight. On March 8th, we had a video kickoff meeting with Tony and Scott, and we discussed the goals, and we had a variety of questions that we asked and got answers to related to the types of camping that the city was looking for, what kind of services and to what level, and then other features that they might want incorporated. From there, we began to very conceptually start to lay out an expansion, but we were waiting to actually visit the site until the snow was gone. And we did that and met with Scott and Tony on May 10th, and we walked around the area of the overflow camping site and the open field site and discussed some of the pros and cons of locating the campground, the expansion at both sites, and got a feel for kind of the lay of the land and what were some of the challenges and opportunities that were available on both sites. Then we came back to the office and kind of went to the drawing board and really took the concept design a little bit further and kind of developed what we have now through back and forth phone calls and discussions with mostly Tony at that point. So we designed a layout for the open field site, and we thought that that was the best opportunity for the expansion, and we had a variety of reasons for that. The first was that the existing overflow site is used for overflow camping and also overflow parking for the boat landing, which apparently there's short parkings there. So that was something that if we put the campground in the open field, that site would still be available for overflow parking and potentially overflow camping. City representatives also indicated that there has been discussion about using that overflow area for kind of group activities or games or public gatherings, and there was a potential desire to leave that more of an open area and even potentially put a pavilion up. That also led us to the other site for our design. And then with the open field, we were able to get in 2 more sites. So we got 7 sites in compared to 5. And as the mayor just indicated, getting more revenue is part of the goal of expanding the campground. And we had utilities actually on both sites were fairly convenient, and that was good for both sites. But for the reasons I just said, we determined our first option and what we thought was the best was the open field. From there, we did an engineer's opinion of probable cost for that expansion and presented that to Tony. And he indicated that the council probably would like to see a layout in that overflow area. So we proceeded to kind of put to paper what we had more just kind of penciled in and plans, and we were experimenting with different designs, but we actually put it to paper as you see, and then we also created an engineer's opinion of probable construction costs with that design also. So in your packet, there are 3 sheets. One is an overview showing the existing campground, what we are saying is our first option in the open field, and then also what we are saying is the second option in the overflow group, in the overflow group camping area. And then we have a more close-up plan of each of those sites and also their corresponding estimate for cost on that. So with that, I would be available for any questions, or if there's any other comments.
Thank you, that helps put this in perspective a little bit for us. Much appreciated. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to solicit public comment or a public hearing, I have to pick which one, on the proposed expanded camping at West End Park and Overflow Camping.
Looking at both of the options being presented.
Yes, looking at both of the options being presented.
Okay, motion by Jen. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, and a second by Karen. Okay, Scott?
Initial question. Are you looking this to be a separate meeting or as part of the council meeting?
If I have to choose, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to put any work back onto the administration. My thoughts were it could be the Parks Committee could have some open public sessions down there to gather community, or we could do it as part of a public hearing. So I'm kind of open to how we do that. Not saying we need to, I just think that some type of that would be good. I would prefer for it not to lay on the administration. The Parks Committee, Tony, doesn't have a lot of things going right now. Perhaps they could organize that.
Would it be such a thing where the Parks Committee could have a public information session down there, basically a tour of the sites?
Getting
And
public
then,
input.
and then the public input could be like a window of time where people could email in or answer,
Yeah.
some sort of
I
a
think
survey
something like that would be
question.
great. And I mean, I'm obviously the chair of the Parks Committee, and I'd be willing to put the work in to do that.
Okay, anyone have any comments or questions?
Are we
Dave
looking
and then Mary.
for a poll? Is that what we're looking for?
Well, I mean, just gathering public input, I don't know if that,
So what were we gonna do with that input?
So I've thought a lot about that because if anyone's noticed, I've been trying to get public input on this. And it's basically exactly what you think. You get people that are like, yeah, go for it. Sounds great. We need it. Other people are like, well, what about this? What about this? And I feel like for me, because it's not, and I know that we have issues with the park, with the West End plan, right? But when we put time and energy and money and our public faith in a plan, and then we just decide yep, it's crap and we're gonna move on and not do it, I feel like we owe the public at least, and if everybody comes out of the woodwork and says, no, I don't think we should do that, then we can at least take the information that we get and we can come back here and have a discussion with public information and look at some choices. That's my thought on that. So I don't think a poll is gonna help. I think gathering information, getting opinions, I mean, I actually have opened a pretty big dialogue and I've learned quite a bit in the past day from folks. And I've also educated quite a bit because a lot of people are like, oh, just put it down here. Well, guess what? We can't put it down there because it's wet. And so I think bringing our community along with this at some level is super important, because if not, people are just not gonna trust us and not be part of it, something that could be exciting. I'm not opposed to it, but I also, my problem is we keep getting a lot of things proposed. And, we've got a dog park, bike stuff, the exercise equipment. I feel like sooner or later, we've got to figure out what our community wants in these three spaces. I mean, we have 3 open fields, over 20 years ago, it was up for condo development. Exactly what we're talking about tonight was up for condo development. And this community voted not to do it, right? And so here we are again, doing something without our community's input. And I'm just not comfortable with it. So that's why I made that motion.
Gary?
I couldn't disagree more. Understandably so when it comes to the condos, that was one thing. And we've been through many plans, but my question is part like Dave's, what exactly is it you're after in the public? I assume I'm going to disagree with Jeremy at this point as well. We went through the entire process of this plan and it went forward. And you just alluded to the fact that generally speaking, we don't like this plan, but this council chose to throw it and move forward. That again couldn't be farther from the truth. The overflow was always anticipated to be expansion. And this spot over here on the plan that came forward to us months ago, the one that was approved by the public, along with all the la-di-da stuff, but the expansion of sites was all over here in pictures designed into the plan. So how many times do we want to go forward to the public, asking for their opinion one more time and not move forward on anything? I would ask you if you would talk to the other members of the group that helped, Jeremy being one, and it's apparent that you don't recall those being over here listed as tent sites and glamping. Those were over here in one form of expansion or another. They came before us, they were approved by the public, and to go back to the public again and get a whole nother set of ideas is just going to push the expansion down the road again. So go talk to Jim Ledeen, go talk to Dick Olson. You know my opinion. I think you've got Jeremy's, but talk to him yet. Who are the other members on that team?
John, Gary was no longer with
Gary
us.
Holman was on it.
And Gary Holman.
Talk to them because I have, and they're wondering why we're reviewing this yet again. And why is it going to the public yet again? So I would suggest that to everybody at this table, to not just take it from me, but go to speak to them as well.
Well, the motion is to get public input. It's not to get like all these different ideas. And it's $500,000. And the original plan was for tents and other things there and not 7 RV sites. And I'm not saying I actually took a walk there, walked the walking trail, looked up. You won't even see the RV sites there. I'm not saying I'm disagreeing with it. I'm just saying that we bring our public along with it in our community and give them a chance. I'm not opposed to the idea, but it's also $500,000.
Sure. Tom?
And from the people that I've talked to on this side of town are all for expanding both places. I talked to some campers down in West End who pay bi-weekly. And they said if they go by the 2015 plan, they are out of here. That's what they said. You go by that plan, they're gone, they're not coming back.
And that would be
When we do that.
Yeah.
rearranging the current.
Rearranging, putting everything closer together. They said they will not come back.
Just to clarify, the sites that we are looking at here in the 2 different plans, those are just daily sites, correct? None of those would be
Correct.
seasonal?
That has not been, that's up for debate and discussion.
Well, like other things, we cut back on the number, or no, we moved around the number of the seasonal sites from the hot spots to less, urban spots or lakefront spots. So I thought the city put a limitation on, but any council could change that as well. But right now, there's a limited number in each park.
That is correct. Currently, the number of seasonal sites is limited at each park, and we have reviewed those periodically. We adjust based on usage. However, with any future plan, no determination has been made related to whether or not they will be seasonal.
Is that determination of sites limitation, with the site limitation based on the number or the percentage?
There was a number of sites at each campground that were determined to be seasonal, and I don't recall all of the logic behind that. That predates me. However, it was felt that there should be some balance at the campground. And there is some advantage to having a number of seasonal sites. They tend to be kind of the eyes and ears as to what is going on at the campground. and, you know, kind of guaranteed revenue for certain sites. If I recall correctly, I believe we have a maximum of 17 at West End, and I think it's 12 or 14 at Memorial.
It's 14, yeah.
So,
Tom?
If you go and talk to people, it's about them, up on the overflow, those that consistently come back year after year, they're up there, they're there for one reason. And I'll tell you right out, there's no other view like that on the lake, and that's why they go up there, they like that view. And what I'm gonna state now, is I talk to friends that are in the tourism industry, and they said tourism is gonna grow exponentially for the next 20 to 30 years. Washburn's 35 years behind Hines when it comes to tourism. We can expand the park and grow the tourism, and hopefully something will happen, like some other things that happen, maybe somebody liked the area and, oh, well, yeah, I want to expand here, so we have something else coming in. But if we have to get behind this tourism, because that's the only industry Washburn basically has right now.
Okay, Jen and then Karen.
Karen's first.
Oh, Karen, go ahead.
We're debating the merits of the proposal. We have a motion on the floor, which is regarding public comment. Can we continue this discussion about the merits of the plan with the motion on the floor that we seek public comment? Because I have some other questions about number of bathrooms and the availability of grant funding, which is beyond the motion. And my question is that appropriate to discuss?
I guess I would allow it.
Yes, because I think that's relevant to whether you want to move
Okay,
forward.
right. Well, I thought so, but I thought I'd ask. I guess the question, in the memo from Tony, indicating whether, he would try to get some additional information in terms of, whether an additional bathroom, was going to be required by the Bayfield County Health Department, so that's question one.
Tony, have you heard back from the health department?
I have not heard back from Pete, so I did call him a couple weeks ago, just to ask, how many sites would be required for the bathroom, for a bathroom? And he said it was based on a calculation percentage of something. So an example would be an RV that has a bathroom in it would not qualify, or would not be part of
The equation.
the equation.
It would be considered a standalone.
Correct. But I don't
Even if we
know.
don't have, oh, I guess we do have a dump station. Yeah.
So like a tent site would need a bathroom space.
Sure.
Would need a bathroom. The RVs wouldn't necessarily, if they have their own. There's a percentage that figures that out, and Pete hasn't gotten back to me with.
So we don't really have
it's
that
determined.
So we don't have that answer, but regardless,
If,
A, we could use a bathroom over there. Sure. But B, if we don't need it to be required to build, we could potentially do that in stages then.
if these sites are connected to sewer, which is what is in proposed and costs were developed, we would not need to expand our bathrooms because they are connected to sewer already.
So, but it does have the bathroom, it does have the bathroom listed as in the.
It does, and that is something that Nicole put together with the cost and location, but we wouldn't necessarily need it.
At either location, both are designed to be.
Am I correct on that, Nicole?
Yes, Tony is right. We have it in as a line item in case you would want to have one.
Okay.
But we approach this as kind of a list of things that most of it you would need to do this, but the bathrooms are something that you could take out, and obviously it's the biggest ticket item on the list.
Yeah, that makes a big
And the
difference.
bathrooms are $160,784, that could be eliminated, but that goes into my second question. And that is, again, Tony, a question to you. Available grant funding, I believe you had mentioned to me that there would be some sources that would make us eligible for some funding.
I have been in contact with the DNR grants agent for the region, and she said that this project expansion would be eligible for funding. I don't know how much. All the DNR grants I look at
are usually a 50-50 match.
Okay.
But you have to score high to get them.
That was the case with the Knowles Nelson for sure. This would fit under a different category.
The ADLP.
Yeah.
Because just to, and, because we're talking really $1 million if we look at both.
If you did both,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
If you did both, except, you wouldn't do 2 bathrooms then, you would only do 1, right, between the 2 projects?
Well, they each had a bathroom included.
Correct, but I'm just trying to clarify that. Is it
No.
1 per plan
Yes.
because they could be separate, or?
But
You know, it would
ideally,
only
you would
be
just
one.
have one.
Right, so it would be the combined minus 1.
Yes.
Then we're talking 830,000.
If you proceeded with both.
Correct.
Yeah, Tom?
I would say put a bathroom on that overflow, because those tent sites, and then we get rid of those nasty looking porta potties sitting on the lake fronts.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Jen?
Yeah, I was just going to comment back that, the overflow camping area, was gonna be reconfigured, right? For like parking and a pavilion space, so it is quite a departure from the original plan. Now, I agree that we did have, camping in these areas, it's just a different type of camping, so I guess when we say that it's like, the folks at West End Park would love to have more camping, well, sure, right? Because they're campers and they want the best site. And so to me, the best site of that overflow area has been, locals go there all the time and have their lunch and do that kind of stuff too. And so, balancing, between what we do for tourism, and I think we need to do things for tourism. Again, I am not opposed to either one of these. I just feel like we need to bring our community along. And I feel like, the bathroom was one of my questions too. I mean, I think having a bathroom would be really nice over there, because some of the comments that I received back to people were, we're just starting to, Jerry, this is no impact on you. We're just starting to actually take care of our campgrounds. I think we can say, like, we've been kind of on this upward tick. We haven't had, like Jerry, I think when you got here, you were like, wow, these need a lot of help, right? And so we don't even have like a campground manager. I mean, Jerry and Tony are doing a great job, but we're just starting to, like, fix our campgrounds up. So I've heard a lot of comments of, you're barely taking care of the ones you have, you're doing better, but we need to do that. And so I think just those are all things to take into consideration when you expand. And then the other piece is parking. And so if you're going to do, I think that's what Nicole said, was she heard that parking in the overflow. So if you develop both of those, I heard, like, we just put a bunch of money into our boat launch area, and people often use that overflow area for parking. So where are we going to go parking? So there's all these different things that are coming up from the public that I think have been pretty interesting.
I have 2 quick comments, and then Mary, did you still have? One comment that I have is, right now with the overflow, we are allowing people to camp up there for how much? $20?
I believe it's $20.
Okay. So if people are gonna continue camping up there, I would really be more inclined to provide the services and get some more revenue out of it. Because they're doing it now, they're gonna continue to do it. So let's accommodate that and get some of the benefit out of it. That's just my opinion. The other comment that I have is about parking, and that is with the boat launch area there, I think we have, and I hate to say it, but we do have quite a bit of unused green space there, where could we extend those parking spots to make them longer a little bit? Like if you add 10 feet onto a spot in the front, you have a boat trailer parking spot now. So just an idea for how to make that parking area a little bit more accommodating to that use down there.
Sailboat out
And
there,
then-
still
sorry.
taking up spots.
Sorry, Mary?
Yeah, 2 things to that point. The sailboat, I've heard complaints with the sailboat group people. They're supposed to really be over by the playground area, walking over, not parking their mom and pop vehicles there, because that is meant for boats and trailers. Therefore, the overflow parking, if you just limit your overflow parking for boats up there, like they do in the wintertime, is, you know, you end up going up 6 and parking on Lakeview Holman before the highway gets done, but, and yours to that point. But I've had a few complaints about the sailboat group, people taking over the boat launch parking there. I think it would be helpful, going back to Jen, your point of there being a pavilion and everything up over here. What was really proposed was a boathouse, education room, public space room, sort of built from the lower road into the hill a little bit, for $1 million. So that was the proposal, more for the public stuff over there than a pavilion, say, that we have at the other end of the park. So, it might be helpful for all of us to once again see the original plan in what was laid out.
So, like Mary had said, that area, that field was always designated as being developed and for 10 sites. And I said it at the last time we discussed this issue. I just don't see 10 sites being either this overflow area or in that field. I think it's ridiculous. I would never walking all over the place, and I would never camp in a field and or out in the open sun like that. It's just kind of stupid. If you take the tent sites out of there, get rid of the bathroom, because all the other RV sites are gravity or connected to sewer and water. There's no need for a bathroom. And take the money that we would use for these tent sites in West End and put them in the memorial. That's where tenting needs to be. And there's some exciting stuff happening with some bike trails and such, and I think that would be the perfect place to put those. The whole lends itself to the RV. So that's all I got to say about that.
I would agree with some of that. I think we still need a bathroom over there. You know, we have so much use of that area between the boat launch, even just having a boat launch there to have a bathroom, without having to go drive all the way over to the bathroom over here. You know, you kind of expect to have a bathroom when you come back from being out on the water, unless you're expecting people to use the lake, which we don't want to do. And then hiking on the trail, you know, it's nice to have a bathroom when you're encouraging people to utilize all that space that we have down there.
Well, you've got the equipment there too, people.
Right.
Yeah, so.
There's a lot of reasons
Not a
to
lot
have
of
a
Bathroom
bathroom.
minus the shower bill. There's no tents. RVs all have bathrooms in them. Showering.
And there are showers over here if you do want a shower.
We spent 27 days in RV parks, and every one of the RV parks also had a shower facility.
Which we do already.
A shower's only $5,000, $5,300.
But that may be in RV parks where you're not connected directly to sewer and water.
Even then, yeah, people do want a shower when you're there for a long period of time. Not
They can in their own.
There are a lot of people. who
I'd like a little more
always
always
shower. Need the RV shower.
Some RVs RVs don't have showers.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I think it's.
you know,
Gotta have a bathroom.
You're gonna go back and go shower.
you look at probably the best one that I saw, you had unisex bathroom shower units. And then they had, at the end of it, they had a couple of open bathrooms. And that seemed to work out the best in all of the parks that I was in. Like I said, I was in 27 of them from the last.
So individual access, shower, toilet.
Or unisex shower room, 2 unisex, at the end, one of them being handicap accessible.
And if the toilets are filled, you can still use one of the other ones if no one's in the shower. Tom?
Scott, is the bathroom that we have at West End right now, is that not supposed to be replaced? It's not code, or not up to code? That's what I had heard.
I'm not aware of the one, then Memorial would not be considered ADA accessible at this time, just because of the step and the size of the doors and so forth. So Memorial is one where I think we've got the ADA issue.
But I thought I heard something about West End, the one at West End who had to be replaced. Jerry, you know about that?
I'm sorry, I was whispering in my ear. What's that?
The bathrooms at West End.
Yes.
Is there an issue with the bathrooms at West End? Are they in need of replacements in the foreseeable future?
So West End, the two facilities, the existing facilities that we added on, the handicap accessible family bathroom. So there is a handicap bathroom at West End. So as far as I know, and when I've researched that one, is basically, I don't know as capacity wise, how many versus sites versus campers, but almost everybody there has, you know, if that had water and sewer, you wouldn't hardly get used. But I did want to throw this out. So I've been here a very short time frame, but we redid the boat launch. And when we redid that last year, what had happened was we were getting a lot of complaints from the campgrounds because the boaters were taking their trucks and trailers and they were going into the campgrounds to utilize the bathrooms and they were plugging the roadways. So then we moved the porta potty down to the boat ramp to accommodate the boaters and the walkers. We put one out, and within 2 weeks, the complaints started coming in. If you remember, it was overflowing. They couldn't even go a week with one porta potty because it was overflowing. So then we put a second one in, and we put the second one in. The very next thing that happened was we put 2 porta potties out, and the second one wasn't ADA compliant, so they take it out. That's why you see at all the parks we have, most of them have 2 porta potties where there's high usage, is because you have to have an ADA compliant one because you have, you know, so there's a multiple use there. But I will tell you, West End and Thompson, the boat landing, those bathrooms get, yeah, I mean, sometimes, probably from now until probably, you know, beginning of September, sometimes you have to empty both those twice a week because they get so overloaded. Just my insight. There you go.
Thank you.
Just another word on bathrooms. So what is proposed in this plan as a huff cut type bathroom, just to give everyone
The Cadillac of bathrooms.
well, just to give everyone an understanding, we have one of those, the bathroom at the Marina boat ramp is a huff cut building. So it's basically a precast concrete modular style building where you basically pick your pattern, whether you just want a bathroom or you want a bathroom and a shower or this or that. So they're used, it's a Wisconsin company, they're used in a lot of state parks and things like that too. So they're designed to be
Sweet smelling.
yeah.
Sweet smell. The sweet smelling clothes. They're nice.
Or when they're in a storm.
And they're also, yeah. Can we, I just make a motion to open the floor in case we have any public comment? Second.
Motion and a second to open the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The floor is open. If anyone would like to provide any comments on this topic
There's 3 people out there.
at this time.
And there's somebody online. Maybe not. Who's Mitch?
Oh,
It wasn't the dog, it was barking.
Right. Sorry to speak.
Seeing none, hearing none, I will close public.
oh, wait, we have one.
Here,
We have a live one.
Jeremy Oswald, 401 West Fifth Street. I guess my opposition to lining up RVs in these 2 spots is just it seems to be giving more of our parks to visitors, which are important to us. But as someone who likes to go down and enjoy the park, I don't think I feel as welcome going down there with rows and rows of RV parks that in my opinion look like a trailer park. And I'm surprised that people who were opposed to the housing across from Stage North because of what it would do to our lakeshore view might be in favor of this, because it's much closer to the lakeshore than what was proposed across from Stage North. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Any other public comment on this topic? Seeing none,
Move to close public comment.
Second?
motion to close by Karen, second by Jen, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so back to our discussion on our original motion, which is to bring both of these plans to the public for input in some fashion.
I guess I'd like to amend that to include discussion and review of the original plan.
That was Jen's original motion, so you're
To
asking,
review the original plan?
so her motion is to bring these two forward.
Yes,
So you're asking for an amendment?
to include discussion and review of the original plan that keeps coming up is why we do it this way when so much time went into this other plan. Because there's
I
a,
think that would all be part of it.
Yeah, that'll be
It would all
part,
be like,
that'll
what we
automatically
proposed,
be
it's
part.
what we're doing now, so I think it would all be part of it.
okay, well, I would like this because I would like to have more information because I was not around for that. So people that are very, have strong memories of how this decision came to be, conflict with just assumptions people make that weren't there as part of it. So it would be nice to know why decisions were made at that time, what's changed that it may or may not apply anymore. And so we can agree on goals.
So I don't think we need to amend the motion to be able to do that. And we will make sure to include that as part of our discussion. I'm sure it will automatically be part of that discussion, but we can make sure to do that without having to amend the motion.
And that's just my reason to support the motion.
Okay, okay,
So if we're gonna be discussing the old proposal, that old proposal had a lot of fluff and stuff in there. So what are we putting in, taking out? Are we saying this is the old proposal? You like this proposal?
No.
Or you like this proposal?
I think we need to
So-
discuss and determine what the fluff is. I think it's the real.
But we're going to get 100 different,
so,
opinions
So
on what
we
should
already
keep
had
and
that-
what we should take out.
sure, so we already had the discussion, looking at the old proposal, and that is why we asked for this. So now I think we're bringing what we just asked for forward for input on, and then it's gonna come back to us for more discussion, at which time you can ask any questions that you want before that or during that process about the old plan. But we literally did discuss the old plan when we decided to ask for this.
Because we needed numbers and we needed these line items.
How much did this cost the city, this design?
$15,000.
Right, another $15,000 that we discussed when we discussed this, we decided we'd like to have more RV sites over there and to get numbers on it. And now we're gonna bring it back, and so $15,000 may just,
Well, to be honest, that's why I did
Well,
not vote for the original
No, but-
motion, because I wanted to do this.
But take
originally.
this, we got this, we had none of this, so that's part of the
No,
$15,000.
I get it, but the city did spend some money to have an engineering firm design this
Yeah.
proposal.
Correct.
that
And that's
this
what we're going to-
council-
And that's what the motion is, to get input on.
But now we're gonna bring the other proposal back out for discussion during these and find out what people like.
Anybody who wants to bring up anything in our discussion can do that. And they can ask questions about the old plan. It's not like we're gonna shut down discussion. Anyway, Tom?
I can see talking about the public know about this plan, you go talking about the old plan, that's been collecting dust 7 years. You have to shut the park down to do that, Then the city has to turn around and borrow the money, and because of interest, they're not gonna get the money back.
Okay, once again, I'm gonna say, we've already had that discussion here. The motion is to bring these two proposals forward for input from the public. The old plan may or may not come up in the discussion. If you want it to come up, you can bring it up. But we are not requesting input on the old plan. We are requesting input on these two proposals.
That was my motion.
Anyone else before we take a vote? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Are we gonna have a roll call?
Roll call.
Dave Anderson? Nay. Carl Berberg?
Yay.
Jen Mazias?
Yay.
Mayor McGrath?
Nay.
Tom Nymus?
Nay.
Karen Novacek?
Yay.
Laura Tulowitzki?
Aye.
4 ayes, 4 in favor, 3 against.
Motion carries. Okay, so we will come up with a plan for how we will bring this forward via the Parks
I think the
Committee.
Parks Committee could do like a couple open houses down there and have the board up and get public comment, and then we can bring that back to council, and they could use that information to decide to move forward with it, tweak it, only do one, all sorts of options.
And it would be helpful in that, that some of the topics that came up tonight in our discussion are brought up and included.
Yeah, I've done a lot of these where you can look at sticky notes,
Yep.
like what we like about this, so it's not gonna be like, what a pavilion, or you can't, it's not gonna be, it's bringing these two things to the public to get their input on this stuff.
And it's one or the other, or both, but only with one bathroom.
We can definitely talk about it. I think public will.
Can we have this back by September? August or September?
Well, it's already July. We have
It's
to do-
July, so I think we'll work out our publics and come up with a couple of dates, but yeah, I think actually doing it like late August, September to get public input is a good time, so yeah, like back by October, for the council meeting, September, October would probably be totally good. Yeah. I don't
You
think we
fine
have
with that,
like-
Dave?
Well, what if they did?
Motion passed, so we'll work on doing that
Whenever they get to us.
So, we're done with our motion and our vote, so I'm not gonna do anything further on this at this time. We're gonna move on to our next item.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank
Can I
you.
add one other comment or just a correction? The two things, the estimates were meant to be independent and the plans are meant to be independent. So I just wanted to clarify, that's one of the reasons, some of the same things, the Huff Cut building is in both plans because the idea was that you would either do one site or the other site. So it wasn't that it would both be done, number one. And then the second one is just to clarify, it's minor, but the concept plan to do this and kind of do the analysis, that was $10,000, not $15,000.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, and with that, if we're done, I am gonna sign out of the meeting.
You bet. Have a good night. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, our next item is discussion and action on proposed improvements to Bayfield Street in Phase 2 of the State Highway 13 reconstruction project. Just to clarify, there aren't any specific proposed improvements. We're looking for ideas of proposed improvements. And we're not making any decisions necessarily tonight. We're just talking about the types of things that we want to see. Is that accurate? Does that sound like what the intention of this item is?
Well, I specifically wanted to address the 5 items I outlined.
So you want decisions on those tonight?
I don't believe that final decisions are needed on all of them. It's going to depend on your comfort level.
Okay.
I mean, I'm hoping that the detour and hopefully the decorative lighting are fairly well agreed upon. So those two we have discussed, but the other three items we have not discussed at all.
Karen?
And that was my question, in terms of what is our timeframe, Scott, in terms of, you want a decision on the first two and thoughts and comments about the 3, 4, and 5?
So we've got a couple months to make some decisions on this. The DOT wants us to move forward on the second phase planning, so we're just starting that right now. So for those of you who may recall how we kind of started on the first phase, it was discussing some of these items. We were discussing the detour, we discussed decorative lighting, we had discussed bump outs and other pedestrian enhancements that the city desired. The concrete terraces kind of came up later, but we are going to have some continuity of sidewalk issues that are going to need to be discussed in this phase as well. So what I would like you to do is to begin, you can kind of go through these one at a time. If you're fairly comfortable with the detour route, well, okay, do that. We had kind of planned on the lighting. If you're comfortable that that's where you want the lighting, okay, we could decide it. If you think that we need more public discussion on that, okay, then we'll have another public meeting regarding this project and what we're proposing here. I think some of the more serious thought probably needs to be on, are there any locations that you see along the second phase, basically being from 2nd Avenue West here down to Superior Avenue, where there may be a need for additional pedestrian enhancements? Now, keep in mind, anything that we want, we're going to end up paying for. It's pretty much guaranteed.
As confirmed by conversations today.
So the other thing, for continuity's sake, is we had decided doing concrete terraces for a portion on the first phase. How far down do you want to continue that into the second phase? So the one thing to keep in mind is, if you've kind of got a concept in your mind, I don't have the numbers right now, but if you kind of have, well, I think it would look good here, then we can go and get those numbers and then verify that with you. The right-of-way on the second phase is wider than it is on the first phase. The first phase, the highway is only 66 feet wide. Second phase, where there's more room, 80 feet wide. So if there's a change at Washington Avenue.
The right of way.
So,
Not the road. Right.
so there is there's a significant difference. There will be increased costs the more you want, say, more concrete or things like that. It's going to cost us more because there's more area to cover. In looking at the sidewalk, you have a sidewalk that goes continuous down to 3rd, but there are sporadic sections of sidewalk that extend well beyond that, but it's intermittent. A lot of it is not maintained. What is your desire? Do you want to have a continuous sidewalk, for example, that maybe goes all the way down to Memorial Park or beyond? Any potential future development? Now keep in mind, this is going to bring up a whole series of questions and issues, because who's going to pay for this sidewalk?
And the trees that come down.
And the trees that come down. Urban-rural cross-section, we have curb and gutter up through about 3rd there as well. Then beyond that, it's a little bit, it continues more on the north side as opposed to the south side. Then it goes to an urban where there's no curb and gutter. Do you want to change any of that? So those are things that I think the council needs to start thinking about. And kind of once you've got a preliminary thought of what you want, then let's take that forward and do those public meetings with the business owners and the public who lived out on that site and say, what do you think about this? And to verify or make any adjustments, and bring that back for a final vote, and we can inform the DOT of what our desire is.
Okay, Karen?
Suggestion, so that we don't jump around, because if we take a half hour in any one of those topics, I'll start with a motion that we approve the detour route, Washington Avenue and Mackey Road.
Do we need to take action on these individually? Can we do a consensus?
Or whatever. But otherwise, if we start trying to talk about terraces and then the detour and, I'm just trying to organize them so that we get something done.
Okay, I was planning on just going through each one to get a consensus.
That's why I started with the detour, number one.
Sure, but you made a motion.
Yeah,
So
well-
is there a second to that motion? Okay, so there's a motion to approve the detour route as planned currently.
I have a question on I mean, I understand that we want it to go, so how long is that going to be rerouted for?
Construction season, basically. I mean, assuming, I
So
don't know
from
the exact
Washington-
timeline, but it should be within one construction season.
I know, I know, that's the only, I'm trying to think of like a.
There will still be access, just as there will be on this other detour.
Not he's
Up
just way
to-
far out.
It's just a highway.
I know, it just like sends everybody, I'm thinking like, trust me, I don't want them down like Third or Fourth Street, 'cause there's like a bunch of residents, I get that, but that at least gets them like closer to, like, oh, hey,
You
there's
can,
a business.
you can still access the businesses and there will be business signage.
I know,
I just send them.
I know, that's why I just was trying to think of someplace that was like, I know, that's hard.
Okay,
I'm just trying to think of,
Yeah.
like throwing people way out of town, like, doesn't even give people the opportunity, they're driving down Third Street, like, oh, look at, hey, Arthur House Suites is right there, I can park, so when we push them so far out, we don't even give them the opportunity to even kind of see, I was just trying to help businesses, I know it's hard, because then you'd be sending the whole traffic down the street, and I don't want that, but I might suck it up for summer to help my businesses.
Making it, they're redoing sections, but talking about.
well, we're not doing sections now.
Right, we're doing
We
the
went
whole-
back by getting Holden Drive paved, now we're not doing the sections.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think so, but there will be
I'm just trying to
access
think of other options.
all the way
But
to
we could do
the highway.
something different there, right?
Potentially, we haven't talked about that timeline, but, it all comes at a price.
There's really no
We
option.
haven't had that discussion.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm just trying to think of businesses. There's no.
Correct,
options.
but, so then, if you were to say break it up into pieces, I don't know how you would get to a reroute then.
But the city streets could, the Bayfield Street could be open in sections so that businesses could have, they could have access to the business if they started at Washington.
Even if you are rerouting the traffic of Washington, you're saying, you would be able to get onto this road a little ways,
It's a little ways.
partway into the project,
Yeah,
potentially.
so we could have that discussion.
So, but it would still have this reroute.
Yeah,
Either
that's
way.
correct.
Either
Yeah,
way.
it's still that, it's still be that reroute, but we can try and.
And that's a whole separate discussion, yeah. Let's stick with the reroute for the time being. Any other questions or comments on the reroute? No. Okay, all in favor?
Right.
Opposed? Motion carried. That at least the reroute.
Who seconded that?
It's Carl.
May I have a second motion?
Yes, Karen.
The second motion is that the decorative lighting in the second phase end at the intersection of First Avenue East.
Second.
Okay, motion by Karen, second by Dave. Any discussion, questions, comments on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Wow.
I don't know what to say about this now. Now you can talk about terraces, sidewalks, and blah, blah.
Okay, concrete terraces. Anyone care to make a motion on concrete terraces?
So that was the first.
Yeah.
Or we can just say we're not ready and we want more discussion, is another motion out there. So concrete terraces. So quick clarifying question. In areas where there already is all concrete, they are replacing the existing, correct?
It would be replaced in kind.
Because if you look at some of those sidewalks, it is all concrete, like in front of Olson and the club down that way.
I don't know if Tony, if you could pull up.
Does it have to be torn up? I mean, are they tearing up all the way to the building?
Correct. They have to for the utilities and the lighting and.
Well, we need to clarify this on the second phase. They may not be going all the way to the building because there is more room.
Oh.
So that is not.
So they might preserve existing concrete, but
That is not, an absolute split.
Oh. So ask DOT.
Well, we discussed that today.
Oh, did I get off the meeting or was I not paying attention?
I don't know.
I did leave a little early. I thought I was paying attention the whole time. But I missed that. So to be determined.
Correct.
So we still have to ask them for their.
Well, the map's not coming up, so.
What about Google?
I can't get to Google because I can't minimize the Zoom screen.
You're not able to?
Wait, you mean like a Google map?
Yeah.
Google Maps. I was thinking Google Earth, which I have the app of, but.
I think we were just looking at Google Maps today, weren't we?
What do you want to see?
Do the layers down there in the corner, the left-hand corner.
Because it will show, because we can zoom in a little bit better.
Where do you want me to zoom in on?
Well, I guess you can kind of see it here. That block west of Central Avenue. That's a lot of concrete there. So that's the area where they might not have to go back all the way to the building, I guess. But we're looking at how far down we want to go with the concrete terraces, assuming we want concrete terraces to match the first phase.
Yes.
matching it.
Well, the right.
The good news is we have so much green space in our city.
If you could go down another block. This way. So you'll note, okay, if you want to stop there for a second, so you'll notice here we have been pretty much continuous concrete until we get to the block with the cultural center and Legion Park.
Right.
We still continuous concrete on what I will call the south side for consistency's sake. However, on the north side, on the park side, that is a grass terrace. And that is going to continue into the next block with forestry building and the ironworks. There, then in the second half of that block, when we get to Second, that's where it pretty much from that point forward is continuous grass for the remainder.
There's no sidewalk, right? Like, well, I guess one more.
There's still sidewalk, they're quite a ways.
Sidewalk and so yeah.
But as far as continuation of the terrace,
And if you'll notice, part of that is with the design of the ironworks, the sidewalk actually kind of bumps out from the building right there and then comes back in.
So while we're looking at this, I think that is a good, somewhere in there is a good place for, when we were talking about later, the bump out situation. might be a good place. Or one more block down, one of those.
There was a suggestion.
Tony, if you want to go down the third, that was one idea. This is the access to the ball fields.
Yeah, and there's so much passing on it, right? It's not.
Okay, everyone, we're gonna stick with the concrete terrace discussion
Just,
first.
I thought we would both.
So you said you got a continuous coverage to this point, then when it comes back, and
It's actually under the grass too in some,
right,
Like-
so we'll get it up in this area,
oh yeah.
and it keeps going actually all the way up past Superior Avenue.
And they will replace existing
Uh, if they disturb it,
if they disturb it. Okay.
if they disturb it, otherwise, no.
Okay.
And that is the issue with the wider right of way. They may not need to disturb it.
I'll make a motion to run that concrete terrace to Second Avenue East.
Can you go back to the second page, not the third?
So that's in front of the Forest Service building and the ironwork.
So you're,
Ending
So
there.
that, yeah, right there. Because it's concrete on this side up to here.
so you would,
You want to take it out.
So,
Take
The
it
lighting would end
That's
after
fire.
the Memorial Park.
Light ends, decorative light ends here, concrete terrace would go up to there.
so why would you want the concrete terrace to go that
Oh, just.
far?
I think we did that on the other end too.
Yeah.
That
That's
the,
what I'm wondering why.
the concrete terrace extended to kind of include those businesses into that downtown
on the south side of the
You want concrete on the north side at the park and right the forest.
That's because to make it match, because right now there's concrete on the south side, all the way up to there already.
I think the benefit that, on the mirror side, the east, the west side of town, benefit I came around to getting on board with this terrace was the idea of feeling like the sidewalks were wider for passing, for kids that are on bikes, for, focusing on making all of the main routes pedestrians use for, staying off the highway and linear roads between public buildings and sites, playgrounds, parks, things like that. They need to be very pedestrian friendly. We don't have a bike path right there, the same path that they know from driving the car, so. I feel like it's in good shape. It's that when the buildings look residential in nature, they're, green, it seems unnecessary to change it and make it all concrete except for that continuity and the wider food service.
Tom, your motion was what?
To
Concrete.
terrace to Second Avenue.
Which is up there, which would extend where the concrete is on the south side, another half a block, or part of the block.
Well, like there's a private residence, like next to the building before you get to the second.
Right.
Like I don't know. I mean, I just feel like that's kind of getting into residential down in there, and I mean, I guess I would end it before that, because I don't know if we need it, like, at the Legion Park. I mean, that strip is pretty wide and it's like mowable. It's not like it's like a little gravel thing. It's like grass, like nice grass, you know? I don't know.
So you would basically recommend leaving everything as is?
Up
Can
to
you go
like
back
past the cultural center. Yeah, like from there, yeah. Leaving it as is from the cultural center on, but I don't know. I have to go look at it, walk it, feel it, I don't know.
I don't think it would look right this, so it's.
You don't think it would look great?
we have no terrace on the south side.
That's right, wouldn't,
And
wouldn't
terrace on the north
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, so if the north side was all concrete, it would,
Like
instead of
new,
that.
is it gonna be all new concrete?
Yeah.
All, they're gonna rip all that up and new,
If we put the concrete terrace in, yes, that would be good.
and I know that,
The sidewalk, you're asking if the sidewalk would be new too?
right, is the sidewalk gonna be new?
So we don't know, and I don't know if we're ready to make a decision on this without knowing that.
I think we need to know about the sidewalk.
Yeah.
How far back they're gonna have to go with their construction, so
Right.
that we know how much we would be paying for. It's part of
If
the
that's the
decision.
case, it wouldn't look too weird, but, yeah. And then there's some trees there too, like I know, like, in front of where Jamie Ritter's, like, place is, I know that there's a couple trees that the people, that,
Yeah,
Person-
not about her, bookstore.
yeah, there's like,
But that's already terraced. I mean,
Yeah, that's already terraced.
right, but they're gonna rip it out and replace it?
I don't think they have to cut the tree down, do they?
The tree probably would not survive.
Right.
We can get rid of the tree.
I mean, which is fine, I'm just saying, like, I mean, we might wanna do some public sensing, I don't know.
Yeah, because there's one in front of the hardware store, in front of the chamber building, and front of the civic
well, let's
center.
accept the condition of some of those sidewalks. I mean, Richard Abel at the bookstore would gladly give up his tree.
Right,
If he could
right.
get, if he wouldn't get sued by people
Right,
that
no, totally, I
stumble into his bookstore.
completely agree, I think the sidewalk thing is very important.
But-
Agree.
There's a tree in the middle, I mean.
Okay, so we need more info.
Yeah.
Well, we have a motion though that we just need to vote on.
Was there a second on that?
Yes, wait, I wrote it down, I
I
thought.
wrote it down, but I didn't hear a second.
And the motion was to take the terrace to Second Avenue.
That was oh no, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It was,
I'll second.
Did we have a second?
No.
Oh,
Didn't
oops.
think so, right?
So Mary seconded it?
Yeah.
Motion by Tom, second by Mary. And then any other discussion before we vote on the motion?
This is on both sides of the street.
Both sides of the street to Second Avenue East.
Yeah, because aesthetically, it doesn't, what you got, what's there right now does not match, it doesn't look the same, it doesn't look good. If it matches, should look fine.
Yeah, and you start moving towards the township, like you were saying.
Anything else before we take a vote?
I think just on the tree issue, assume that the existing trees are gone.
Yeah.
If you want to do trees, that should probably be a separate discussion.
Like replant trees.
Oh. I
We're
think
talking
we
about
should-
terrace, so right now, we're gonna vote on the concrete terrace on both sides up to Second Avenue East. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries. Okay. But we're still asking DOT to clarify how much of that is.
Mayor, my suggestion on the sidewalks would be until we get clarification from transportation about how much sidewalk they're going to be needing to replace or willing to replace, that, you know, we can talk about it, but it may change dramatically depending on what, and rather than spend time talking about that, I would prefer us to go to item 5 and talk about pedestrian enhancements. I think that we've had one comment in our packet, was the bump out. And I'm real familiar with that intersection and kids not only going to the ball games, but in the winter going to the skating rink. And it's dark and it's hard for me to anticipate how much help a bump out provides. I mean, it slows the traffic and that helps. Whether or not it can, well, and it prevents the passing on the right.
Right, I think that's the
Yeah,
big thing. is
yeah.
passing on
So-
the right, and people kind of like,
So I think we should do something on that intersection.
and people really start to go fast, like,
Yeah,
so
they
they
start
hit that,
standing.
that's like kind of out of town.
Oh,
for them,
yeah.
even though the speed
Or
limit's
because they're
really
coming
low.
into town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, is it possible to add an island?
And that's all, we have to get cost estimates on all of that, because we're gonna be paying for any of that stuff. because we don't meet their safety criteria for it to be their cost.
Oh,
Because there
really?
haven't been accidents.
Oh.
Only
No,
near
only
misses.
terrified children.
Yeah, only terrified children, near misses.
Guess we need to start taking some accidents.
All of a sudden, we just started seeing a
I
rash
know,
of
Laura's
this.
kids, wait for this.
Mary, just stop checking.
No. Okay, so we have no motion on the continuity of sidewalk at this time. I'm assuming we probably won't have a motion on the bump outs or other pedestrian enhancements either until we have more information on how much that would cost and get input on what we think is desired or necessary there.
I understand the bump out on Third,
Mhm.
but I would also think a bump out on Central,
Oh.
because that is,
Ooh,
that's a terrible corner to come out of, because
visually.
visually, you have to go out beyond the bookstore to see if there's any traffic coming.
That's actually a big problem in a lot of places when you're approaching the highway
But
from the
there's-
side streets.
The marina traffic and
Marina
stuff.
traffic, they're pulling a boat, and
Right.
so,
It's kind of a little, there's definitely a lot of traffic. I would say both of those are good spots to at least consider until we know funding.
Actually, there's a plan on the shelf for that.
Yeah.
When we did the Central,
Oh, yes, the Central Avenue.
it's got 4 bump outs there, and then the rest of the plan for Central. I'll adjust on that one.
Yeah.
So I'm sensing a consensus that we should look at those two spots.
Yeah, those are two kind of like, they're separated enough where, yeah, be a good spot. And then, yeah, just knowing about like islands and different things, like I know that people don't love those kind of plowing and stuff. You know? But it'd be nice to at least kind of.
Gary's ignoring us right now. Did you hear what we're talking about?
No.
Island.
That might be easier to plow around than the bump out. No, okay.
Oh, no.
Well, like,
They
what's,
suck.
what's the street in, what's the street in Ashland, that goes to the Northland College that has like kind of the
Oh, on
island?
the Avenue?
So-
Avon.
Beezer has some, and then Sandra,
Ellis.
or Ellis.
Ellis has
Ellis.
it, yeah.
Ellis has like this kind of,
They have a boulevard.
Yeah.
what's a boulevard?
An island, basically, a long island.
A very long island.
Well, continuous, I think boulevards are continuous, the islands are
Like, I wonder why they did that, like
history,
scenic history?
been there forever.
Oh, yeah.
You should hear the
Anything
council on
to
that
make
one,
it
up, going up.
Feel smaller, so you have to slow down, short of putting in speed bumps and all of that. Right?
What speed bumps?
Yeah, I mean, like, then how else are you gonna slow down and get attention? I mean, I don't think
I don't think
anyone's
so.
lights either.
I think that's a good
State
question to
highway.
ask, like, what are our options? I asked that today and really, they only said like crosswalks. Well, I know there's more options than just crosswalks, with flashing lights and
Well,
different visual.
sure, and we discussed that for the first phase too. You can have the flashing crosswalks, you can have the light crosswalk like they have in Ashland on Highway 2.
By the church.
Correct. When we discussed that, because the only 2 locations on the first phase that we decided to do anything are on Washington and Third. So, because the lights came up when we discussed that, it was decided not to do that at those locations. All I'm gonna be doing is just pulling the cost of these bump outs. It's gonna be the same at this point.
And then there's the issue of consistency. Since we're doing it with bump outs there, do we do it with bump outs on the other
And
side?
I think we thought the bump outs also would give us an opportunity to have, like, 'cause we know like trees are hard, we happen to have like some decorative stuff to make it look a little bit better in those bump outs that we could remove for plowing, and we thought we might have some options on those bump outs. I don't know. I think the bump outs are a good idea. They keep it consistent. 2 down there, 2 up here.
Okay, so consensus is to look at bump outs in those 2 locations. which were Third and
Central.
Central. Okay, we got through that list. Not too bad. Okay, so moving on to our next item, which is discussion and action on job description for full-time EMT basic. Tab 6 of your packet. It's really exciting to be at this juncture where we get to approve the job description.
Mayor, I move approval of the job description and authorization to hire full-time EMT.
Second.
Okay, motion by Karen, second by Mary. To approve the job description, do we need the authorization to hire that position?
At this time,
Oh, okay, I thought that was implied in the referendum. That was just the money for it. Okay, thank you. Okay, any discussion on that item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm
Motion
sorry,
carries.
I apologize.
No, that's clear.
It's nice to have someone up, supporting that, right? Okay, next item, discussion and action on authorization to fill equipment operator laborer position, tab 7.
So moved.
Second, motion by Mary, second by Jen. Any comments, questions, or discussion on that?
I don't know if we do this, but Scott's asking if we still want the council to approve hirings.
So that's the next item.
Oh, there it is, sorry, I'm reading it out of here.
Yep, no, you're good. Any other questions, comments, or discussion on the authorization to fill that position? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is discussion and action on the hiring process policy.
Motion to leave it to staff?
Do you want to make any contingent upon budget sort of situation in that motion, or?
Not I,
So just,
unless Carl has.
motion to leave it to the staff by Mary, second by Carl. And I'm assuming the staff isn't going to hire if they don't have the budget to do it.
Correct.
Yeah.
I would think that we could trust our staff to make that determination.
I would consider that a career limiting decision.
Any comments, questions, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And just to
You're welcome.
clarify on that, the ordinance, that wouldn't apply to department heads.
Oh, right.
Mayor has the
Yeah.
decision to hire department heads.
Okay, so this is the staff.
Yes, employees other than
Other than
department heads.
department heads. Got it. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, our next item. Discussion on scenic byway and off-premise sign ordinance requirements and provisions. Tab 8 of your packet. Thank you for going back and digging up some of this information. And did everyone have a chance to look at the sign ordinance that I asked Scott to dig up? No, that's kind of,
A lot. Where was that?
It's a lot.
he just emailed it today
Today?
because I just asked him this morning.
My box? Can you bring that up? Okay.
Mayor, could I ask you a point of clarification?
Sure,
The agenda says a discussion
correct,
and no action.
correct. Just discussion, so that we get a sense of where people want to go with this, because at some point we will need to take action on an ordinance. If,
I just wanted that clarification.
yeah, because we don't have an ordinance in front of us to look at, so we'll just stick with the discussion. Scott?
Well, just so that everyone is clear on what the process is. I mean, if you want to make a change, the first thing that we would need to do is to approve a resolution that either eliminates or changes the location of the scenic byway within the city. And that would have to be approved. We may need to have a public hearing on that. And we'd have to have that done and finalized first. Then, after that, then it would come down to, you would have the ability to consider a ordinance amendment related to signage. But if there's no desire to do anything different with the scenic byway, the signage ordinance issue is moot. You cannot change it.
Correct. Okay, so I'm just going to share a little bit of knowledge that I've gained through going through the grant process for the scenic byway very recently. I just wrote a grant for $1.5 million for 2 projects along the scenic byway. This funding only comes available probably every 10, 12 years when they maybe assign some new national scenic byways and then some more funding comes available. So it's a very periodic pot of money that comes available. My understanding, after going through that very detailed and painful process, is that you don't necessarily have to be right on the byway to be eligible for applying for a grant like that. As long as you contribute or have some relationship to the byway and are in the proximity of the byway, you would still be eligible for that grant funding. All that an exemption would do is exempt your downtown, however you define that, from the restrictions of signage. And that is why normally they automatically exempt your downtown unless you specifically pass an ordinance to include it, because it is always such an issue for signage in cities. And so, and we have seen that this is an issue in the city with signage and the desire to have signage, off-premise signage in our downtown for the businesses that are off of the highway that want to make a change to the signs that they currently have or put up a sign if they don't have one. So as someone who has literally been through this entire process of this original scenic byway designation and now the national byway designation and writing a grant and really getting into the weeds of the rules, I'm very confident in saying that if we decide to exempt our downtown, it is not going to have a detrimental effect on our byway status. We will still be on the byway. You know, we're surrounding the byway. You know, it's coming into town and it's going out of town. We're still going to be part of the byway map and the byway everything. You know, it's not going to make us go away just by exempting our downtown. Mary?
So within that, I understood that, okay, you could open up the downtown again and be off, but that within the advertising part of both the state and the national, Washburn would show up as a city, but it wouldn't show up that it's got the brownstones or it's got a historic district or it is X amount of blocks or the campgrounds. None of that would come into showing up on the national and the state level for advertising anything within the downtown area. Is that right?
So, in what I have found, there isn't a whole lot of advertising that goes on for the byway except for what the destination does itself. the byway is represented on the official websites and information about the byways, but it's very general and very overview kind of promotional. It is up to the byway to decide how to promote itself and to either pay to do that or get grants to help do that or work with the destinations, like DMOs, the chambers along the way to do that. It's really not, in my understanding, anything that we would be losing out on. We can clarify that and ask very specifically.
I would be, yeah, because I see that, just say Red Cliff stay on, it would show 13 and advertise certainly the big hotel there.
What would advertise that? I mean,
The byways themselves, because if Red Cliff stayed on there, everything, just say they haven't taken anything out of the byway. So the byway would say, and going through Red Cliff, you will see the 30-room hotel and the 50-spot camping ground or something like that.
What is the byway that you think is saying this?
The advertise, like if you go and say, I want to go see a scenic byway, which of the 5 would you choose in Wisconsin?
Sure.
And you say, oh, I would look at this one up here. And if we took ourselves out of
It's
that.
only the downtown that's coming
Okay.
out. So Washburn is still on the byway.
Okay,
It's just whatever exemption within
okay. I would
the
not want,
city.
I wouldn't want to lose any amount of, we've got 2 beautiful campgrounds and people to think there's only one in Red Cliff. That's kind of where I'm going.
So the other side to that is that we literally are in control of what we say about the byway.
Okay.
We are not losing out on anything because there isn't anything really that's promoting us other than ourselves. The state, we'd like to think that it does, and I'm trying to get the state and the DOT to work together because it's a DOT designation, and the state is the one that markets the state, and they are just still learning how to work with each other to decide how the state can help promote the byways.
After 10 years?
Oh, yes. And I'm working harder on that now that we have attained the National Scenic Byway status. Because, now we have 3 National Scenic Byways in Wisconsin, so now it's kind of a bigger deal. So what I'm trying to get the state to say, oh, yes, we will highlight our byways on the state website, because right now they don't. I mean, we're included, but we're not highlighted like, oh, here's our 5 scenic byways. So,
Okay.
When we look at the map, okay?
what map,
What map are you at?
the byway website?
On the byway website. So when you look at the byway website, what are other towns doing? So it's us, it's Bayfield, Cornucopia, and Herbster and Fort Wayne. I mean, that's our kind of our little, when you go on the map. So like, are their downtowns part of it? Is Bayfield's, like, that's, I mean, I guess
I forgot to find that out. Do you know if Bayfield's downtown is exempt or not?
I cannot say with any certainty.
Sure.
So I'm just, and again, like, just making sure, because
Just
I
so you
remember
know.
when we went through it, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think just our due diligence and research to make
Yes.
sure we're not losing out on anything.
Absolutely.
One of the things that really puzzles me is we have some off-site signs. And they're all wrong, right? They're all for things that don't
Right.
exist. So is there an opportunity in the interim to be able to work with somebody who doesn't have a sign that, like, can we switch it out to help like a couple of people that are having issues right now? Because they're there, and they're wrong. Well, what's the chamber? So what's the Washburn Chamber? We have a Washburn Chamber, like, sign right there that could be replaced for somebody that's having an issue right now with the sign very easily. And it's a Washburn Chamber.
No, we don't know. The chambers own it.
Well,
Kevin Hunt owns those signs. Kevin Hunt
Well,
passed away,
yeah.
so I don't know who owns them now, but,
his daughter's running that place.
so anyway, those signs are privately owned. They have nothing to.
But they still are off-premise signs.
They're existing.
So,
Okay.
The answer to your question is copies of signs, meaning what the sign is actually advertising, can change. The sign structure cannot. So, for example, in this case, exactly, the chamber sign, and I've actually sent a letter saying, hey, you know, this business is no longer there, it needs to come down, and that is on the property owner. And we have to resend that to the new property owner.
Come down, or can it change to a different business?
Yes, it can.
I would drop that one off.
Because there's,
The Mary Mermaid.
Yes.
Perhaps.
Would help that.
I'd like to, can you open the floor for comment? I'd make a motion to open the floor.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Would anyone like to weigh in on this? Ms.
I would
Emily?
love to have a sign up there, but the scenic byway issue doesn't allow me to.
Well,
So the answer to the question is, if there is an existing sign, that sign, you can't make the sign larger or do anything to the structure of the sign, but the message on the sign can change.
Even though I don't have my business on the byway.
That's correct. For another example is, people may know when you come in around the curve, there were those three
Yeah.
signs, okay, those signs have changed. Those are all off-premise signs.
They're grandfathered in.
They're grandfathered in. They cannot change the structure. I had a recent issue where someone added lights and said, you can't do that, take that down. But the message on those signs can change. This is the message on these signs can change. The difficulty with the stake fit sign is that's a difficult sign to not change the structure of the sign.
Right, I was just looking at the other one that
But
might
the
help
other
out in
ones
the-
are
might help out in
possible.
the interim. I think we still have something that we need to research, but I guess I would like to still research it a bit, because I remember how big of a deal it was, and see what other communities are doing, because it does have, there are some, I don't know, is the restrictions one thing, because we have to sign.
so I think when this was originally being passed, there was a lot of uncertainty because we had never had the designation before. We didn't know what it really was like and what it really did. So now having a pretty good idea after 10 years of what it's really like, having that designation and what it has given me a lot more comfort with this. I'm literally the one who does that website.
Yeah.
I mean, I control the message at this point. And I say I, but it's really the Scenic Byway Council that approves those sorts of overall, but I'm the one left to do the actual work. And there will always be someone doing that, controlling the message of our own byway and what we want to say about it. Like I said, at the
Yeah,
state.
just open up the letter, it's you.
Oh, Mary, isn't it true, like on the, like the golf course did, you can, and Sparky's did out in Barksdale,
Yes.
you can pay your annual fee to the DOT for those.
Tourist-oriented directional
Yeah.
signs, yeah.
$500,
For 5 years, yeah. So it's about $100 a year,
but you pay it all up front.
but you pay it all up front, correct?
So that's for the blue.
Yeah.
There you go.
I wouldn't say they're useless.
You
think they're
Because everyone that wants to come to your business, they probably already seek you out and know where you are. Signage that doesn't have much of a message isn't going to help attract new business to your doorstep.
You're gonna tell me that when you drive through a town and you see a sign that says Little Star Point Beach, and you go, oh my God, I didn't know there was a beach down there.
What's a beach?
Right,
Not a business.
correct.
Right.
But that kind of signage where it's
Right.
pointing to something that you didn't know was there.
Wayfinding
What about the
signs.
golf course? What if you didn't know we had a golf course and now there's a sign says golf course and you go, oh, there's a golf course here. I'm gonna have to come back and go golfing.
Right.
You don't think
But
that's helpful?
There are, for example, if someone drove up from Tennessee and they're driving from here to on the bike, and they see the Big Top Chautauqua blue sign at the bottom of the hill. And they go, Big Top Chautauqua, what's that? And they're 70 years old and they don't have iPhone to look it up. So,
Like I'm doing
right.
I have an
So,
iPhone.
what does it say? It doesn't say anything. It says Big Top Chautauqua. What I'm getting at is we need signs that people can have their message and give a quick synopsis of what that business is.
And we could do that if we change
Yes.
make our downtown exempt from the byway and make a change in the ordinance.
So I would request that we ask Max to draft a resolution to get us out of this mess.
Which I would be supportive of, as long as I knew for sure.
I want details.
So
Just
we wanna-
because it was such a
Details.
pain to get into it, we don't wanna make sure. that
We wanna-
just, like-
I agree.
We want to ask
Yes.
questions of the DOT and then we want,
Language, yeah, and when
A resolution.
signs,
I have a question.
yes, Karen.
I would want clarification, in 20213.7.3, or 7.2, it says that we have to, if we decide to remove ourselves or a portion of the community from it, that we have to have a 2/3 vote and shall have one public hearing. So I'm reading that is that in addition to getting more clarification, we have to have a public hearing. Max, would you agree? Point 2.
And we have, starting in August, 1 year to go through this process, at the most. Obviously, we would want it to move along a little quicker than that, probably, if we're gonna do it.
But I don't want you guys, if you haven't, Mary Yalkowski's letter, but, I would
Yes.
like to, your meeting.
Right, and it was basically about the blue signs. So you have
Yeah,
options.
the blue signs, and the other thing, how much signage, where's the line drawn when so much signage becomes clutter? I mean, so there's that, and that's up for, that's an interpretation from any one of us.
Right, and to be clear, I'm not advocating that we just have a, free-for-all on off-premise signage. I think we can still have an ordinance on off-premise signage that will have some restrictions on what we would want to see. But for the Harborview Event Center to have a flame sign at this point is kind of,
Are they making a maple leaf?
it's kind of,
Yeah, it's restricting.
yeah, and it's just.
To be able to change the shape of the sign
Yes.
would be very nice,
Yes.
yes.
Well, and we would have control over the ordinance.
Correct.
To make
Yeah.
it, I think that we do want to be careful on what our signs look like, and we want to have some kind of a, maybe even some, so they're all kind of.
Mary and then Karen.
And as we consider this though, and you all can agree or disagree, because I'm one of those people that, I don't have a phone. And so when I travel, I look at street addresses. But we have a lot of Airbnbs and Verbos and whatnot now. How many of those people may want to come down to Bayfield Street and put up signage? If they're open, if they're, I start thinking, there could be a lot.
Right.
If people really,
We've all been to those towns, right?
So if we can safely just be able to put signage on here, we wouldn't want to open it up until we had a discussion on the parameters, where it can go, have it all look a certain way, and.
There's obviously some benefit to not having all, controlling your signage, but yes, we don't want, I've heard complaints for years about our sign ordinance, and how difficult it is. But I think that's okay, sometimes we want things to look decent.
Not be cluttered,
Not be cluttered.
Karen.
Well, I think you're right, Jen. I think that the sign ordinance in terms of new signs, and of someone that wants to play by the rules, it is difficult. But we also know that there are a lot of signs on Bayfield Street that do not conform with our ordinance. And we've been not, we've been not enforcing them. And I think that as we go forward with the construction on Highway 13, i.e. Bayfield Street, that maybe is a time when we really have to crack down on, if we have a sign ordinance, then we should be enforcing it, and we are not.
And there's certain people that come in and conform and do a great job.
Yeah.
And there's other people that don't, so like me.
Right. So, I mean, this is opening up a bigger, and I think an important issue is that what do we want our downtown to look like? I mean, we've talked a lot about how we want it to be aesthetically pleasing, how we want to have decorations, how we want to have flowers and benches, and light poles. Well, do we want a plethora of signs with no restrictions? I don't think I don't.
We do
I
have,
think, and I think the floor is still open, so Emily?
Oh, I just wanted to ask a quick question about, so those statement signs, and those are privately owned, and I'm imagining that any new signs erected would be on private property. So how do you, like, if the sign can be changed, like the old chamber sign, would I then have to purchase it from the existing owner, or?
I think we could probably follow up with you to get you some
Okay.
details, but I think, I know the answer to that, but if you want to go ahead.
It is going to be, you're gonna have to coordinate that with the property owner.
That's what I thought, yeah, okay.
And they would likely lease it to you, I'm guessing,
Oh, okay.
or something like that, which is what happens with those signs down coming into town.
Yeah.
They're privately owned and leased.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on this topic? Otherwise, let's make a motion to close the floor.
make a motion to close the floor.
And second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And we don't have any action on this item, but we have some general consensus, I think, that we'd like to ask some detailed questions of the DOT, just to be sure we're not losing anything by exempting our downtown and having next work on a draft resolution.
See what our neighbors are doing.
Yes.
I'd like to know what our neighbors are doing.
And that would really just be Bayfield as far as cities exempting their downtowns. Although I did see a provision in there that an unincorporated area could also choose to do that under the county's zoning. And I know that Ashland's not a part of this.
They're not.
No, the byway starts at the roundabout in the town of Eileen and comes up and around the byway. Well, who's talking about it? Because Douglas County's not doing anything about it.
Not true.
It goes just over the county line, because it's right at the intersection of two major roads, so it's at the county, where the county highways meet, just before the mouth of the Brule, is where it goes right now. So what is Bayfield doing? Or what did they do? Did they exempt or not? Very good. All right, with that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Yes,
Every
absolutely.
time I come, I just admire you all more and more.
Thanks for being patient.
Thank you.
Get it all dialed in. I think that we wouldn't need the 2/3 on the public hearing.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
just that you
that's
want
what
to completely remove
Yeah,
it
we're
from the designation, not just to accept the business.